podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?
Greetings, everybody. On the weekend, where triple captain has comprehensively won FPL forever, we're here to say it's the end of the podcast. Goodbye. No, not really. But lots of stuff going on. As fixture swings are in full sway, meaning as FPL managers have many decisions to make. Joined today by Sam, fresh from a 1-1 draw at St Mary's on the weekend. How are you, mate?
Yeah, very good. It was good to go to my first live match of the season. So really enjoyed that. Unfortunate not to win, but I thought we played quite well. Sadly, Southampton are not doing so well tonight. So yeah, back to normal service. It was also quite an odd experience watching a live football match whilst not able to watch or even really keep track of how my triple captain was doing. So that was a bit of a weird one, but obviously all ended up fairly okay for me, so I'm not going to complain about that. But in the real world, all good. Thank you very much, Tom. As always, we are Who Got the Assist. On today's agenda, game week 6, we'll have a quick review of that. Chips were indeed used. We'll check out how we both did individually. And today we'll be taking a deeper look at upcoming fixture swings, where the opportunities to differentiate are, and which players' fixtures will appeal most, depending on your own strategies, of course, and future planning, including what has changed since last week. Obviously, a popular week for a lot of wildcards to be used. Have we learned anything since then? Is there anything that we might have done differently for those of you who might have wildcarded? And of course, form versus fixtures, as always, a couple of mid-price midfielders in the data there. Our one week punts return as always, captaincy, and finally our team. So it is Tuesday, the 30th of September. We've got some Champions League action going on in the background and during the week. And just a quick shout out as well to the upcoming weekend. There's an FPL meetup going on in London again at the Thirsty Bear on the 4th of October. So I think, Tom, you've got a bit more detail on that, but all are welcome as always.
Indeed, yeah. Midday onwards on Saturday. The live games, there's 4 of them. Well, 3, well, I guess not. So it's Leeds and Spurs, and then Chelsea and Liverpool in the afternoon. The evening at 5:30, and then that's Arsenal, West Ham, Man United and Sunderland going on. So we can all delight in another Bruno Pen miss. But yeah, no, it should be a really good day. Fortunately, this is one I can't make just because I've had so much going on recently. I've definitely am needed at home to do some childcare. But yeah, no, it's always a very good event, and we will definitely be along for the final one of the year, and probably one kind of a later one going on. But yeah, this time we can't make it. But yeah, should be good. The numbers are looking quite good for it apparently. So yeah, the Thirsty Bear, midday onwards on Saturday. If you can make it there, it's near kind of Waterloo East, something like that. Yeah. All right, so on to oh god, no, not again. Game week 6. So I did get a green arrow, Sam. I got green arrow on my wild card, and I knocked about 1 million off my rank. Yeah, it is. But I benched Gabriel. So yeah, it was a bit of a bittersweet one. Obviously, it was very good that Arsenal got the last minute win. But I was admonished about this by a friend of the pod, Dave, on Blue Sky. My FPL brain overrode the endorphins to bring a bit of a sourness to proceedings. Maybe that's sad, but that's just how it all works now after almost 10 years of doing this and being kind of quite into it. I felt like I wanted to hedge Sam, and felt like Newcastle would score and that Wolves wouldn't. So I played Romero over him. And yeah, until the 95th minute, it was all looking fine, and then it suddenly wasn't. And I also can't help but note the delicious irony in that I said last week I'm going to chronically underthink this wildcard, Sam. I'm going to not think about it too much. But the one thing that I actually did think about and do, which was to play Romero over Gabriel, has backfired yet again spectacularly. So the best thing maybe going forward for my own team is maybe just don't do anything at all for a very, very long time. Take myself out of the equation, Sam. I'm clearly the problem. I've just sort of accepted that this year is just not going to be my year at this point. Honestly, like anything that can go wrong seems to have gone wrong this year. So I'm just going to roll with it and accept it, continue on, and just have exceptionally low expectations. I'll keep playing as well as I can. I'm not going to tank my team or anything, but yeah, it just feels like I don't know. I feel like I've offended the FPL gods in some way, shape, or form. Senasai with the assist and the bonus, Semenyo with the goal, and Erling Haaland with the captaincy. My only returners this week. I mean, I do complain, but I know that FPL Stats Dan on X played his free hit, and his only return was Captain Haaland. Another friend Nick Wright, managed somehow to bench Haaland and triple captain Reinders instead. So yeah, things could be worse. The team does look very good. It's just so annoying again to just see like some points I could really have effing done with stuck on my bench. But yeah, is what it is. And next week it's all setting up looking quite good again. So yeah, we shall see. Plus, Tarkovsky didn't get DEFCONs the first week I owned him. So I'm very sorry, Sam. I've broken him for both of us.
I'd relax. I think it's all good. Tarkovsky will get DEFCON more often than not. I don't think any defender will go through the whole season getting 100%. As much as we would like to think Senesi will, there will be a week where he just inevitably doesn't either. And also on the Gabriel decision, I don't really have anything against it. I don't think you made the wrong call, and goals are noisy for centre backs. They'll get 1 or 2 a season, maybe 3 or 4 if you're Gabriel and you're a bit lucky. But on the flip side of it, Tarko and Romero both had decent enough goal threat from set pieces themselves. So if you'd reversed it, if you'd done something differently, there was just as much chance that the other defender would have bitten you. So it's just one of those things. Sometimes those go against you. It's annoying as hell, but at the very least, you've got a very good team going into game week 7, as I'm sure we'll come on to later. And I don't think Gabriel will be sat on your bench for many weeks to come. So yeah, annoying, but you did get a green arrow and you're on the charge. So I think you're in a good place, Tom. I think better weeks are coming. Onto my team. I actually had a worse week than you when you look at it. So I got 70 points. So the points total is better, but I did use my triple captaincy chip. I only got 2 proper returns across my 11. I got a couple of DEFCONers in there, but we're not really counting them as returns at the moment, are we? So yeah, I had the heroics of Haaland getting me 48 points. Obviously, absolutely loving that. Very happy, fortunate, delighted, whatever you want to call. Relieved more than anything else to get those kind of returns from my triple captain and move on. And Watkins was my only other returner. So I'm glad I held on to him. And now I've got him ahead of Burnley at home as well. So I'm feeling pretty good about being patient with players like him. Although 1 return in 6 is hardly anything to brag about. I've also kept patient on Ismail Assar, who I wasn't expecting miracles from this week and is stuck on my bench against Liverpool for his 11-pointer, but I'm more than happy to have him for the weeks ahead. So another player I've held on to for arguably too long that I just think will do me just fine over the next few weeks. But yeah, pretty terrible week aside from the fact that the triple captain went well. But I think a lot of people just had a bit of a meh week in terms of overall returns. I didn't have any Bournemouth in there. Didn't have Gabriel either. Not even on my bench, Tom. So I can't just bring him in immediately without a transfer. So yeah, it's one of those weeks. But up to 1 million in rank and hoping to get inside the top million next week.
Yeah, you should do. I think your team's pretty well set up. I feel like the Watkins goal when that went in felt like the most inevitable thing that was going to happen this week. I'd have put good money on it if I was a betting man. But yeah, other than that, whatever happened really with regards to this week. It did feel like, if it wasn't for Haaland, I think most people would have been not in the teens, in the 20s, something like that. Like if Mo Salah was going gangbusters this year, and that would have kind of caused a bit more sort of like uncertainty surrounding swapping him out for Haaland. I feel like there could have been a lot of people who were marooned on like 20, 30 points this week. So yeah, as someone said in the chat, 3 returns from 11 in the green it's one of those weeks which is very strange and just masked by how dominant that captaincy was effectively this week. Only in the last minute though. Until the very, very last minute, it was looking like, oh God, there's another triple captaincy down the drain for those people who did go there. And indeed, for me, with captaincy, because my rank was so low that my EO for Haaland was 100%. So any returns were good returns, frankly. It was just the case that, him, Haaland and Haaland, basically, in those last couple of minutes. And I know friend of the pod, the Surya, all about FPL, got a response from Haaland on Instagram, which is really cool. So yeah, he knows what he was doing, old Erling. I'm just hoping that if I do put triple capture on him at some point later in the year, that he does, do the same for me. Maybe even get a hat trick, Erling. See how it goes. Right, on to a bit of news this week. West Ham did their own face swap. Yes, so breaking news on Saturday morning, which is very, very strange after Graham Potter had done the Friday press conference.
Yeah, just rude, isn't it? Don't like that.
Very, very strange. Potter was out as West Ham did their own swap to Nuno, recently departed Forest manager, ex-Wolves, etc. Now, I think this is a good appointment for West Ham, Sam. It carries a guarantee. Some might say an aura, but that is, again, a bit like cheat code becomes such a horribly overused term. Maybe I'm getting old now that I complain about these things, but I've heard that everywhere recently. Oh, he's got an aura. This team's got an aura about them. This player's got an aura about them. And it's just making me want to vom. But yeah, he does have that sort of guarantee of them sort of staying up, given he's just a good, solid manager for a mid-table Prem team. And that squad, Sam, I think, we've got a few players highlighted here. Seems to be suited, I think, to Nuno's way of playing as it stands rather than Potterball. And some good fixtures coming up as well after the Arsenal game. So, yeah, I mean, I think they're going to become quite interesting quite quickly.
Yeah, I completely agree. None more so than Bowen, down 3 times in price since the start of the season. So 7.7 million. He's kind of fighting it out with the likes of João Pedro, Mateta at that price now. And I think there's a very reasonable shout to be looking at him basically immediately after game week 7 is out the way. They've got a great little run of fixtures. Obviously, we know Nuno can get the best out of a centre forward. I know Bowen's playing slightly out on left, but he's talismanic enough that I'm going to count him as the Chris Wood of the team in a way. I don't think Füllkrug's going to get the minutes or be fit enough to take that place in the West Ham team. So I'm going to give it to Bowen for the time being. He's also got 3 goals in his last 4 league games, and that obviously includes under Potter as well. He just quietly ticks along very nicely, and the cheaper he gets, the more tempting he'll become. 7.7 seems like a great price to be looking at. No one's going to buy realistically ahead of game week 7, but after 7, 8 onwards looks great. Paquetá looks good, got good minutes, not bad positions he was taking up as well. Not bad on DEFCON either. Somerville was also pretty impressive against Everton, got some good XG from that game. I think Somerville was a player that Nuno wanted at Nottingham Forest at some point as well. So there might be a nice relationship brewing there. And of course, as we know from his days at Nottingham Forest, the defenders do rack up some DEFCON. They do keep a few more clean sheets. So if they can sort out their goalkeeper problems, which still seems to be the one drawback there, I think they're on to something really special. I didn't even mention Juve, who's got 4 assists in 6. So yeah, lots of options that straight away when we get to game week 8, going to become very interesting.
Yeah, Kilman, Youth, and you said Somerville, Paqueta, Bowen. I think Somerville could be one of those who just emerges out of nowhere. Just to make a good option that price. Fruki actually asked us earlier on about kind of DEFCON defenders versus centre backs, and I think that we can kind of maybe crowbar that in a little bit. We did mention a couple of weeks ago and say it was pretty much always DEFCON, but with Youth and Kilman both at 4.4, if you were kind of wild carding now, thinking there'll be a future sort of run for them. Which one would you go for? Because I think Diouf is equal 4th for chances created as well amongst defenders, so he's doing pretty well, especially in the in the Nuno system. As we know, fullbacks or wingbacks, however you want to put it, can perform very well. So I feel like I might make an exception on the DEFCON rule and have a bit of a punt on Diouf, assuming I won't be playing him every week. I'll be playing him in the good fixture week sort of thing.
Yeah, I can see an argument for it. I think there's a massive chunk of overperformance going on at the moment, though. 4 assists and 6 is the kind of returns that are just not going to be kept up along the season. You're not even Trent can keep up with those sort of returns. So I think once those kind of regress a little bit, he's going to become a bit less appealing. And if you've got a DEFCON defender that is just hitting them regularly, even if it's 50% of the time, which as we've seen is a perfectly realistic number for a lot of half decent DEFCON defenders, that is equating to, what is that? 2 assists in every 4 or 5 game weeks. So unless Juve can match that, and I don't think he can over the season, you might as well just go for the DEFCON one. And that's again under the assumption that West Ham are even going to keep enough clean sheets to make the DEFCON relevant, because there are other defenders that are hitting DEFCON very regularly that are also in defenses that we kind of trust already. So it will take a lot for me to see them as really good options even at that price point. But if they do start keeping it tight, then yeah, Kilman, maybe Juve come onto the radar a little bit.
Yeah, the lusciously haired now Areola as well.
Yeah.
That hairstyle has completely thrown me. But yeah, no, I was playing the devil's advocate a bit there. I do think the DEFCON is still the way to go. I do think Bowen, frankly, if João Pedro does go away with Brazil and play both those games and has knackered recently, let's be honest. A friend of mine's a Chelsea fan was at the game the other day and said he was just blowing after 55, 60 minutes because he's just been chasing shadows for 2 games straight against 10 men. He's gonna, I think he's playing tonight as well because they've got no one else.
I think he's on the bench.
He's on the bench. Okay, so maybe he's getting a little bit of rest tonight. Okay.
Let me just double check that in the background whilst you carry on.
Yeah, but I think Bowen could be a really interesting sort of pick for that period. I think he was the standout talisman in terms of the points scored, the proportion of team points scored last year for the whole team. So I think he could be a really interesting one for going ahead. I'm still a bit iffy on Paqueta. We'll have to see how that kind of goes, whether he does try and transform into Gibbs White. I know he's on penalties, but do feel like he's a bit of a Tielemans and being a little bit overstated by the Algos, who were kind of the main sort of drivers towards him. But yeah, do really like Bowen going forward. He's always one that's going to be in your thoughts, especially with the new manager bounce, so on and so forth. Yeah, love new manager bounce. The run is good, and would definitely consider them if I was wildcarding soon. That's for sure, because there are going to be, if you don't go for João Pedro, there is one player we'll speak about later on who's doing very well in the underlying data too, plays for Chelsea. All right, but first, let's talk about swing to win. Interesting one to talk about this week, as there's more swingers at the table than a khaki party, and there's even more to come. Yeah, you can't talk about swingers these days without people thinking about the pineapple, can you? But actually, to help us contextualize this a little bit more, I've identified, Sam, for us, because everybody knows, for example, that Arsenal have a swing in fixtures now, the City and Liverpool have a swing in 13, Chelsea actually have a swing in 8, which isn't on this graphic because it would have ruined the aesthetic. But I thought, instead of kind of identifying those, because they've already been pre-identified, there's no point in going over those again. What I thought could be interesting is to think about 3 types of swinging. No, get your heads out of the gutter, people. 3 types of FPL fixture swings, which could be potentially different and could potentially impact how we plan things. So the 3 types that I've kind of identified are thusly. One is a mini swing, so where teams or a few teams have a very small set of games which are good. So maybe you have 2 or 3. So I've identified here, for example, in Gameweek 8 and 9, Leeds, West Ham, and Wolves all have a good pair of games. So Leeds have got Burnley away, West Ham at home. West Ham have got Brentford at home, Leeds away. Wolves have got Sunderland away, and then Burnley at home. That's it. The rest of the fixtures then become more mixed, but over those 2 games, they're really good. So that's a mini swing. The next step up is kind of a midi swing, where a few teams have, say, kind of 3, 4, maybe 5 weeks of good fixtures, a midicosm, such as Arsenal right now, and a couple of others, including Newcastle, whose run's actually pretty good. If you take away kind of the FDR and just look at it, really, it's not bad at all. And Forest, Brighton, Fulham, West Ham, and Brentford up to 11, and Man City, who have, yes, they've got Liverpool and Gameweek 11, but the next 4, Brentford, Everton, Aston Villa, and Bournemouth, are all perfectly good for City. So that's 4 or 5 games for these teams, which will probably constitute a bit of a midi swing in my view. And then at the very extreme, you've got the maxi swing. We didn't have very much of this last year. I think last year was really, really kind of quite mixed. This year, we do have a real turnaround for a few teams when we get to game week 13. We know Liverpool and City have a really, really good run, but also Bournemouth have a really good run then, all the way up to game week 18. Sunderland, Everton, Chelsea at home, Man United away. Not the best fixture in the world, but actually probably fairly decent based on what we know now. I'm assuming some Chelsea defenders will be back by then, but you never know. Burnley and Brentford. And then Newcastle, again, feature here. So Everton, Spurs, Burnley, Sunderland, Chelsea, Man United. Again, same caveats apply. So there's lots of, I suppose, different ways of looking at it. But I wonder if looking at swings in this way that I concocted today could help managers better assess and plan what's coming up in the short, medium, and longest term. So I suppose we do different things depending on sort of the different types of swings that we'd see, right?
Yeah, and I think the mini swings are particularly interesting if you're about to plan something like a wild card, or you just need something to paper over the cracks for a couple of weeks, maybe find a quick differential, someone that's a bit of an enabler. Obviously, last week a lot of us went from Salah to Haaland. On the other side of that, you're probably downgrading Salah quite dramatically. You're probably looking at targeting a couple of fixtures there with the mini swings. And if you just look at the teams that you're picking out here, Leeds, West Ham, Wolves, they're not necessarily players that you need or want to have long term or to rely on week in, week out over the long term. So what you can do with those are store them on your bench for a lot of the time, Leeds in particular with your 4.0 defenders, your 5 million midfielders. And you only really need to focus on these mini fixture pairings for them where you're like, okay, 2 weeks, who can I rotate them in for? And I can kind of forget about them after that. They can just sit on my bench for a little while longer. Then with the midi ones, I think you start focusing on the quality of team a little bit more. So Arsenal, Man City, Newcastle are all very good teams. Also, when we get to the maxi, and if you're looking at a longer period of time, you're probably targeting more expensive players, more important shifts in the FPL meta, in the templates for many FPL drafts, and therefore transfer plans around those fixture swings probably need to be a bit more well orchestrated a few weeks in advance. You need to have a bit of a plan for it. A few people in the chat have already noted that by game week 13, you're probably going to want a few free transfers to jump onto expensive players like Salah, Haaland, if you don't have him at that point for whatever reason. Newcastle players as well. Bournemouth are in there too, which we currently own, but who knows what will happen between now and game week 13. So with that in mind, I think the mini fixture swings, the pairings that you're talking about are more not necessarily ones to plan around, but more when you get to a scenario and you need something there and then, it's just something to pick up and play with right there. The midi and the maxi ones would be, okay, let's try and forecast these and have a look at what that might mean for my team and how I might want my structure to look to enable attacking those fixtures at the best way possible when we get to those different periods. 7 was a big one. 13 is a really big one. But if you look at the fixtures in 13 in particular, we're probably going to have a fair few of those players already in there. Bournemouth popular, Man City popular. You're going to have a few. So maybe it's not that desperate.
I think no, you're completely right. And I think what's really interesting about it is there's a kind of different scales of FOMO when it comes to them in some ways, and obviously that depends on the teams as well. But when there's a mini swing, so when the team has kind of 2 or 3 good fixtures, it so depends on the nature of that team whether you're going to get FOMO about it, whether it's essentially missable. So yeah, Leeds having Burnley and West Ham. If I don't have any Leeds players in situ, I'm going to be looking to roll the transfer nowadays. Now we've got 5 free transfers. I think that the roll is probably going to be better than the expected points output of using the transfer to buy one of those players in. If I've got my own player, I've got a stack hanging around, I can play them. Fine, I'm very happy to do that. But unless we're seeing kind of a Man City who have got a pair of newly promoted clubs back to back all of a sudden out of a really kind of dog fixture list otherwise, then I think that's quite missable. But as you say, when it comes to the midi, comes to the maxi, as people in the chat have also identified, that is the point when you do a couple of things. 1 is plan chips, and 2 is plan to get those free transfers in place. And there's also when you might buy a player just even though kind of in the short term the fixtures are quite mixed, because you're thinking, well, I've saved myself a transfer in the future going forward. That's why, even though Bournemouth had Leeds straight away, after that, Fulham, Palace, Forest, and then City and Villa's not the toughest fixture in the world. But I was thinking, well, I might as well get Semenyo, obviously, and Senesi in place, just because the two things sort of mixed together. And same with Man City, similar to Newcastle. I do kind of think maybe I could have kind of thought about them a tiny bit more. And if you're wildcarding this week, I'd certainly be thinking about the Arsenal games out of the way. There's loads of different ways to kind of approach it. And I do think with the mini is very kind of free hit focused a lot of the time. The midi and the maxi, if you've got like kind of that big swing, like we've said at the start of the season, we both really wanted to keep that wild card to game week 13. And I think you're in a really good position now, Sam, to actually do that and get all the way to game week 13 and then really sort of capitalise on it. I think, especially when it comes to Liverpool factor, the other ones, you can kind of, you're probably going to be getting some Bournemouth, Newcastle, kind of good fixtures, but also kind of missable. They're not going to hurt you too much if you don't get a Newcastle player in. You've got Haaland. You probably could get Rangers in at some point if you wanted to. But the Liverpool, getting them in, I'm going to need to kind of get, if I want to get Salah and Haaland, I'm going to need kind of 4 or 5 free transfers by that point to action that. Whereas you can just kind of flick a switch and off you go. So I think these things are really important to basically keep an eye on. And that's not a seriously good finding or a seriously insightful thing to say, hey, fixture swings are really important. But I think chunking them up this way could be quite handy. Question chat from Nobby: how do we make the most of kind fixtures if the assets just aren't there? Sometimes there are really good fixtures for teams that you shouldn't really be buying players from. So remember that last year, Luton buying, was it last year or the year before, buying like Alfie Doughty and things like that.
Yeah, it was Leif Davis last year, the regen.
Don't remind me. Oh my goodness. That was, it was a choice on the wildcard, Sam, between him and Milenkovic at 4.5. Guess which one I went with?
Yeah.
So, yes, judgment is the key part of whether you decide to take part or completely ignore when the fixture runs are there. The assets just aren't. Often you can fall prey to forcing it sometimes, I guess. But yeah, I think all three things are quite different, and also quite similar as well in some way, shape, or form. And I think kind of the next kind of point I had here was about the types of players. I think we've really kind of started touching on it. Price, position, which are best suited to being flexible with fixture swings. So I suppose in the past, Sam, the received wisdom was that those premiums, you keep them in, the glue guys, and the smaller mid-price players were the ones you moved around per fixtures. But I don't know, that picture has become a bit more blurred, I think, recently. Like premiums more happily swapped, as we've seen with Haaland, or as I said earlier on. If Salah had started the season really well, then maybe it wouldn't have been as clear cut, and my wildcard 6 may have been a Tumian, for example. So it's situational, but value now, especially with DEFCON, we found all areas of FPL. So I don't know. Is it that you kind of still mix around those mid-price players, Sam, or does it now sort of defy definition a little bit in terms of what players are mostly sort of friendly when it comes to moving around for swings when we see them?
Yeah, so I think another factor, and we've already talked about this a lot over recent weeks, is I think points are becoming slightly more predictable in certain positions, in the cheaper positions, especially in defense, because of the introduction of DEFCON. You've got that 4th, 5th midfielder as well, getting DEFCON more often than not. So it does mean that you probably don't need to target fixtures as much on any of those positions. The second point on that is, with a lot of these middling Premier League teams, and unlike last season and the season before, where there were enough really standout good fixtures on the ticker that you're like, okay, we can undoubtedly say that Bournemouth players are worth bringing in for this run of 6. And this was before Bournemouth turned amazingly good like they are right now. But there was more of a drop-off to the lower few teams in the league. So there were patches of fixtures which were very clearly identifiably targetable, even for the middling Premier League teams. Whereas now this season, I look at the fixture ticker, I see a lot of green, but Sunderland I don't think is an amazing fixture. It's certainly not as good as a Southampton or a Leicester or an Ipswich was last year. Same goes for Leeds. Burnley, jury's out a little bit, but I think in patches they've been relatively comfortable and fairly impressive. They certainly score goals. And then the other teams that, again, might have been making up the numbers a little bit last season, Everton, pretty competitive. West Ham have just got a new manager, so they look like they're going to be a little bit more solid, not so targetable perhaps. You've also got Wolves as well. I expect them to do decently across the season. Brentford have surprised a few people. I just don't think that there's as much of a difference between that middle patch and the lower tier of the Premier League anymore. I think that's a lot more congested, a lot more Constantinaed in. So although on the ticker they might look like a targetable run of fixtures, actually, I think throughout the season, unless you're playing a Man City, an Arsenal, Liverpool, back to back, something like that, pretty much most runs of fixtures are meh, okay, yeah, we'll just kind of coast them out.
Yeah.
But the premium assets, just to round back to the players here, that's where you can see a big drop off because they're the best 2-3 teams in the league. You've got Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool, and they will have clearly identifiable fixture runs where it's like, okay, I can see them scoring 2+ in every single one of these games for 6 game weeks in a row. Therefore, I want to target Salah or I want to target Haaland because the captaincy will be on them. But as soon as you drop down one rung on the ladder, I think that everyone's so evenly matched, relatively speaking. Anyone can kind of beat anyone. Anyone can give each other a good game. That I don't know if fixtures are as targetable anymore, and I'd prefer going after player quality over just a run of fixtures by itself. Obviously, fixtures help. We can see Bournemouth here do have a good run, much better than average run, 13 to 18. But I'd probably want Bournemouth anyway, even if the run didn't look that good, because they're just good players. So I don't want to like overly obsess on fixture swings anymore with the slightly cheaper picks, because I don't think it will make as much difference as what it might have done in the last few seasons.
Yeah, I do think you're right. And I think, as you kind of were mentioning, the fact that the newly promoted clubs just aren't the clear whipping boys and they're not being that sort of Operation Target X really going on, has meant that we're still in a bit of an unstable period. And you're right that maybe there should be a flight to safety in terms of our picks when it comes to minutes, when it comes to different routes to points from players, and maybe that should be the best thing. But you're also right that, for example, this week, people were kind of, there was a bit of most people did kind of turn around the triple caps in the end, at least in the engaged community, or at least caps and Haaland, or most people did buy him in. But there was definitely this train of thought, Burnley are going to sit deep and, can frustrate City. And I think that the danger is that we can fall prey to those sorts of narratives when it comes to, as you say, kind of the top rung teams, when it comes to the really elite teams. Man City playing Leeds in game week 13 and Sunderland at home in game week 15. We shouldn't be sat there thinking, well, they've got a decent kind of defensive record, blah, blah, blah. I mean, Man City is just so much better than them.
That's where there's a big gap, right? Yeah,
exactly. And that is kind of an area where maybe the old kind of thought process does sort of ring true when it comes to Liverpool, Man City. And it may be that a team like Bournemouth, or there's another surprise package that comes through. Last year, the surprise package was Nottingham Forest, but that was a very specific type of surprise package where you have one striker who was massively outperforming the XG for an awful lot of the time, and you had the defense being quite solid. It may be that a Bournemouth or something like that does become a team that somehow ends up challenging, or Palace, as we're seeing this year, ends up challenging kind of that top 6 and threatening to break into the elite. That team, when it gets to that sort of nebulous idea of form, is when maybe you look at that and pair it with the fixtures and think, actually, if they do end up with a decent run, hell yeah, here I am loading up on 2 or 3 of them. Yeah, you are right to have that sort of more nuanced view rather than kind of saying, yeah, I'm more of a fixtures guy, more of a form guy. Never gets to the bottom of that, honestly. Like, we've tried multiple ways through the years, as long as some listeners will know, and we've always come to it depends as the answer. But yeah, honestly, I do think that this year what you're saying is right, but also we're still kind of in the formulative stages, and it's taken a bit longer this year really to establish who's playing what role on the stage of FPL. That's a good thing, honestly, because it keeps us guessing. I think it can be a bit more boring if we kind of already know. No offense to all, Sam, that Southampton are crap. Let's just make sure that we picks around that sort of team, and I think it's cooler if we have it this way rather than the other way.
Completely agreed. Yeah, the fact that the promoter clubs have come up and are competitive, certainly the early signs are they're very competitive, means that it is harder to call every single game. There are going to be a lot of tighter ones out there, and there are just more FPL assets that are interesting, because last season we were picking from 17 clubs, basically, not 20. This year, we've all at some point considered Sunderland, Leeds and Burnley players. I've got 2 Burnley players in my side. I don't play them often, but I do have them. And the same goes for the other 2 promoted clubs as well. So I think it's only good for FPL. It does keep us guessing a little while longer. And it also means that using FPL shortcuts like we might have been able to get away with in previous seasons, and more casual managers do it as well. More often than not, they look at fixtures, see some green on a ticker, and they're like, right, good run, I'm going to target. I don't think it's going to be as easy as that this season. And if you like over a season, obviously the green fixtures do tend to be a little bit easier, but I don't think they're as targetable as they have been in the past generally. So I think taking a bit more of a detailed view at each match as it comes, and maybe relying more on the quality of the team and the pick that you're going with more than the fixtures that they're playing against, could be getting the balance a little bit more correct for this season. I don't know. Obviously, it's early days. In the next 3 game weeks, maybe all the promoted clubs start getting smashed 5-0 and this is all a load of rubbish. But it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. So, yeah, I'm all for it.
Yep. I think maybe just look at your team rather. The emphasis goes back on looking at your team and the problems that you've got, rather than focusing on fixtures and changing players who are performing very well, which we never obviously advise you do, in terms of the form versus fixture thing. But yeah, there's definitely going to be other factors at play rather than just this fixture run is good, let's go for it, because there are so many things which are kind of masking FTR. FTR does a decent job at kind of giving us a directional idea of which teams are kind of coming into a good run, which players you probably target. If it didn't, then obviously we wouldn't be looking at Arsenal this week, for example. It says some arguments, but equally, take it all with a pinch of salt right now. We still just simply don't know. It's based on market odds. It's based on all these sorts of things. And the underlying assumptions are going to change as the season becomes more and more sort of more of a known in the Rumsfeldian sense rather than an unknown. Right. Form versus fixture then. And based on what we do know after 6 weeks, when we typically do start to use stats, although we've kind of started to go very, very early this year because of this new feature that Sam and I dreamed up over a pizza and many beers. Lots of players who, again, we've mixed them around. We don't be talking about Semenyo all the time. We don't be talking about Watkins all the time. We want to talk about some new guys. And there are 2 really, really interesting ones who are bothering the stats, aren't there, Sam? In the shape of Enzo Fernandez and your man Minte, a hero from Gameweek 1 last year. To take Enzo, so obviously earlier on I said, if you don't go with João Pedro, if you're wildcarding now, I would really be thinking, right, I'm going to go with Enzo over João Pedro. I think he's doing pretty well in the underlying data. It's like 3.4 non-pen XGI, which is second. I did double check that. It is correct. Second in the analog stats for big chances for mids, whatever that means, behind the all-conquering Semenyo. 5 attacking returns, again, second for midfielders. On penalties, maybe. João Pedro probably did give him the one he's taken, let's be fair. And Liverpool up next, and then Forest and Sunderland. As mentioned earlier, they do come into a very good run after that, which is why I kind of kept João Pedro, because I thought, you know what, I'm going to leave that and have loads of fun with Sunderland, Spurs, Wolves and Burnley between 9 and 12. But yeah, Enzo Fernandez definitely, again, making a case. Last year he was sneaky good as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, he just seems like a very consistent, steady FPL pick. If he does get the fortune of having another penalty, I think his ownership is going to explode. He's ticking along extremely nicely. I think whilst Cole Palmer is out, he is a much better FPL asset. So keep a watchful eye on the injury updates with Palmer, because I think when Palmer is out, he's got a little bit more license to get involved, be a bit of a box crasher. We saw that at the back post with the way he took his goal over the weekend. I don't know whether it's going to be ticking along at this kind of rate forever, but even if it drops off a little bit, I still think that he's very reasonable value. And yeah, he's putting up the numbers to back it up. I really like the fixtures from game week 8 onwards. Once Liverpool's out the way, if Palmer is still nowhere near getting back into the side, Enzo is going to be very tempting to bring in, because I do have a feeling that the longer that Palmer's out, the more opportunity Enzo's going to have to express himself in advanced areas. When Palmer's back, I think he probably drops in a little bit. That doesn't make him an immediately bad FPL option, but he won't have the same sort of open play goal threat as he might have done without Cole Palmer in the side.
I know what you mean. I do think that Palmer's been, as has been widely noted, slightly off the boil for quite a while, Club World Cup aside. And Enzo has been picking up the slack to some extent, just to the eye, I suppose. You always can notice him, especially when you think about the goal this weekend. You notice him in those sort of advanced areas. entering the box and when possession's on the other side, kind of trying to get on the end of things, which I think is quite an interesting sort of thing. And in FPL parlance, if you play in the box-to-box midfielder an awful lot more. And you're right though that if you've got Palmer sort of in the way, it kind of depends how he facilitates things. But no, I do think it's a really interesting pick. And if you're wildcarding this week, I think I'd definitely be favouring him over João Pedro. Put it that way. But I don't know if he's in the Argentina. I don't know if that selection is out yet. I know he was suspended the last time, so he might be going with so much João Pedro though. To be fair, just have to kind of roll with it and see how it goes. And Liverpool up next as well, but one to just kind of have because the fixture run's quite good and he's performing well, which is quite important. On the other hand, Minte, who's fallen in price, he's down to 5.9, equal with Enzo for non-pen SGI. Second, Sam, again, analog stats for carries into the penalty area this year. Jack Grealish is first, and he's third for Nick's favourite pen box touches. I think the real thing with Minte really is that in contrast with last year, there's not that much sort of real minutes competition. And if you do watch him play, akin to the likes of Ndai, but probably a bit more like Grealish. He's very sort of eye-catching in the way he kind of plays his role in the Brighton team. And he's just always so far forward. Like there's no sort of inclination for him that he's going to be doing that much defending. A really sort of exciting player that you could potentially kind of hang your hat on for 5.9. The fixtures are mixed, but potentially one that you might be considering, Sam, at some point.
Yeah, I think if you were someone wildcarding this game week, he'd be very interesting. And I would even put him in the conversation as someone to maybe look at instead of a Reinders, for instance. He's got much more open play goal threat at the moment, and they're floating at around the same sort of price now. I think there's only 0.1 between the two. And if you actually look at Brighton's fixtures, they never have a particularly great patch all the way through the season, I don't think. But all the way between now and I think if I just check up till game week 16 when they play Liverpool away, you're perfectly happy with playing him in every single week up until that point. And the big question with Minte has always been whether or not he's just going to get reliable enough minutes. Last season, it was early substitutes. It was missing out at random every now and then. It just meant that you couldn't rely upon him. I think he's taken enough of a step up this season that Hertzler trusts him and that he's early days, but I think he's progressing to the level of the trust that he has in a Matoma, for instance. And if he's got the fitness, if he can maintain that fitness throughout the season, I think he could be a fantastic differential and very cheap pick with good underlying data. The reason that I was so keen on having him at the start of last season was the data was almost inhuman. I couldn't believe how good it was. Yes, it was from a poorer league, but it was really quite sensational. And he put up good numbers last year as well when he was on the pitch. He just needs the minutes to help convert that. And I think might be a bit too bold of a statement, but I think you're looking at another Semenyo level player here that give it a year or two, we can be talking about him in a very similar way that we're currently talking about Semenyo. So yeah, I mean, if he can continue like this, I think he's a fantastic pickup. And if I was wildcarding this week, it would be a real decision to be made between him and Reinders.
The next tough fixture they face is Liverpool in game week 16, so in December.
Exactly,
Realistically, I mean, okay, Newcastle at home in game week 8, but who they used to play for? Newcastle, PSR sale. I don't see any problem with, as you said, owning him and just playing him across that kind of fixture run. I really like it. I wish I kind of thought about him actually, rather than going with Ndai a little bit more, which is kind of the point of this, to help other people think about things rather than me.
Also, a note on Minte, just before we move on from him, sorry, I'm pretty sure he doesn't go to AFCON. I don't think Gambia qualified. Someone could please correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I was looking at the AFCON group stage pictures earlier, and I don't think Gambia are on there.
No, they failed. They failed to qualify.
Yeah, so their run,
and Semenyo.
Their run from we talked about game week 16 being the first tough one. So Liverpool in 16, the run after that, Sunderland at home, Arsenal away. Okay, granted, not a nice one, but after that, West Ham away, Burnley at home. So through that Christmas period, some great fixtures as well. So 2 bad fixtures between now and game week 21. Pretty good. I like it.
So you're telling me I should sell and die for Minte tonight? Right. Okay. Hang on. Let me just get on
Yes.
the website
Yes,
and do
definitely.
exactly that right now. Right. No. Let's get out my own way, Tom, and not do that sort of thing. Right. Finally, Senesi. I think this is an interesting one just because if you're wildcarding now or you're kind of have a defensive move to make now, there's kind of that thing that crops up in FPL sometimes. Have I missed the boat? With a player like this. So he's risen 0.4 this year. I think that makes him second highest riser after his teammate Semenyo. He's gone up 0.7, I think it is now. Semenyo, maybe I don't know, but he
He's
started season
0.8
7.
up.
0.8, yeah, absolutely wild, absolutely mad. Senesi up to 4.9. Last year, 9 attacking returns. He started about 2/3 of the games. This year, up to a couple of assists thus far. Bossing the DEFCON, of course, most DEFCONs of any player. As we noticed earlier on, in terms of the swings, Bournemouth do have a very good run from game week 12 all the way, and they've also got kind of okay fixtures. And you can kind of bench them in game week 10 when they play City, which who will get DEFCONs, but they're probably going to concede in that game. But who knows? Because done the impossible job effectively of replacing their entire defense and somehow managing to look just as good, if not better.
Yeah.
Question though, Sam, with Senesi, we're not going to be going over it and saying if he's a good pick or not, because I think he demonstrably is. I think the key question really with him in this form or his team's form, which contributes to him, etc., have non-owners missed the boat? If you were wildcarding this week, Sam, would he be in for you?
100 million, 10 billion%. There's not a universe in which I wouldn't own this person on a wild card. It's the perfect storm. Everything is going for it. Good defensive numbers. So he'll pick up clean sheets. He's insanely high DEFCON rates. And we saw that from last season as well. So we know it's not just a coincidence, not just a flash in the pan. I would pay 6 million for this guy, given the output that he's performing at. He's got good underlying attacking data historically for a defender. Obviously not so great this season, but come on, he still picked up 2 assists. And Bournemouth, like I said, they can keep a clean in any fixture. They do really well against the best teams as well. I would pay a lot more money than 4.9 for him. I don't own him right now. I would even consider wildcarding in parts to make sure that I owned him for the next few game weeks, even without them looking that standout amazing. He'd be a big factor, and it's someone that I am extremely scared of. I've only got 1 free transfer this week. I have actually used that free transfer. We'll come on to that later. It's not for Senesi, and it's made me consider, was that even the right call? Even with the fixtures they've got coming, not great, but honestly, he ticks every single box imaginable at under 5 million. Don't make the mistake of thinking you've missed the boat when he's just going to keep getting 6-7 points a week. It's just not worth it. Get the player.
I agree. I think I kind of did look at kind of Truff Air and Diakise, but I was like, nah, just don't overcomplicate this. Don't overthink it, Tom.
Yeah.
Voltemade, next one up. So 1 headed goal last year in the Bundesliga, 2 in the Premier League, so doubled his tally of headed goals for a man who's kind of over 6 feet. Just maybe an interesting candidate given the fixtures coming up for wildcarders who are going for Enzo over Pedro, potentially. Visser, obviously, on his way back at some point, we think, maybe kind of after the international break. And Voltemade, as I mentioned, a bit of a weird one. Kind of like a very tall Kane. I know Kane's pretty tall, but a very tall Kane, and that being mostly known for being good with his feet and kind of a bit of a proto sort of 9.5. So I wouldn't be kind of thinking that he'd be kind of benched by Visser. Need to see what Howe does with the 2 of them. But potentially quite an interesting one. The minutes haven't been full 90s. He has been kind of hauled off around kind of the 70-minute mark. But he started his Newcastle career pretty well, it's fair to say. As you mentioned, those fixtures are pretty good. It's just Man City, I think, game week 12 for them to worry about. It's just kind of just kind of how it all sort of fits together with them in Europe and things like that. But yeah, potentially a player that people have got an eye on. I was going to say, and it's just been all picked up in the chat too, that another kind of player to mention is obviously Mr. Thiago over at Brentford, who has maybe made many a person sit up and take notice with, especially that just the goal from the Henderson assist this weekend. Quite something that finish, wasn't it, Sam? His career after that kind of awful injury last year at Bournemouth finally taking off, although kind of Doctor United, I suppose, taking the Manslow from Spurs, have kind of reignited him. But yeah, I mean, there are a couple of good forward options that maybe weren't quite on the agenda last week when I was wildcarding.
Yeah, I think Voltemada is particularly interesting at that price. I think Newcastle have done their research quite clearly. They've got a very mobile, but also aerially sufficient striker. So yeah, replaced Isak very well. I don't think he'll get the same amount of goals as Isak, but I think he'll fill that hole pretty nicely. The one question I would have is, when Wissa does come back in, what system are they going to play? Are they going to play with 2 up top and play in that sort of 5-3-2 that they've been trialing a little bit? Are they going to play a 4-3-3 like they have been with 2 wide inside forwards, almost with Gordon, Murphy, Elanga's in there, Barnes is in there? That someone is going to have to miss out. Now, I don't think that's Voltemada by any means, but it does mean that the minutes are going to be a little bit iffy. And he hasn't gotten good minutes yet either. But I think that's mainly to build up a bit of a thicker skin to the Premier League, because I think he had cramps after 60 minutes in the first game. I think they're building him up. But I also think that the plan is that they've got the depth now to rotate the side around the Champions League, around the Premier League fixtures. So I've just got that little worry that early substitutions are going to be fairly common for him, because I think Howe's going to be a shrewd tactician with managing the minutes there to help them fight on all fronts, because I think he is their best striker. They will want him fit for the whole season. They don't want to risk anything. So I think with that in mind, he probably gets 60, 70 minutes a bit more often than we'd like. But 7.1 million, I think he gets penalties as well. He could be very interesting nonetheless. Quick word on Thiago as well. Yeah, I really like him at that price. I think if you're paying around 6 million for any forward, if they're getting decent minutes and they've got penalties, they're automatically in the consideration set. So yeah, definitely some love for Thiago. If you need a cheap forward to enable other things, then yeah, don't look past him. He's a very good option.
Yeah, it feels like a wild card pickup to me rather than an elective one with Man City straight up, and then I think it's Liverpool in game week coming up, isn't it? So yeah, a few things to bear in mind.
Yeah,
And then the final thing is Saka Eze. So Arsenal players, Gyökeres, of course. I think that kind of the third Arsenal asset is one that people are kind of thinking about a little bit. I do think that most people are going to be defaulting to a double Arsenal setup in defence. So Gabriel and Raya for the minutes defensively. I think it's going to be pretty inescapable. Gabriel having like just 100% ownership. So I think that's why I kind of thought, well, I'll go both of them, because at least I gain if Arsenal keep a clean sheet. I do think that this is quite an interesting one if you're not looking to kind of go for Gyökeres, Eze and Saka. Saka obviously is Saka without kind of sounding too truculent. I do think that he has looked a lot. He hasn't kind of come back and looked rusty. He's come back and look kind of himself. And I think Gyökeres as well is sneakily actually quite good for him, because there's that again a little bit like Havertz, but maybe more of Gyökeres. There's a sort of physical presence in the middle, and that kind of focal point for Arsenal, which frees up space for Saka to do Saka things. On the other hand, you've got Eze looking very interesting. The only problem is that Odegaard, if he comes back, where's Eze play? You got Martinelli, who's in competition on the left, and I don't know if I can completely trust Eze's minutes as it stands, which would probably make me think if I was going for the midfielder, I'd still kind of try to pull out the cash to buy my boy Bukayo. I do think Gyökeres is probably at the moment while Havertz is out the one the one I've got, and that's kind of the way I went, even though I'm not 100% convinced, as I kind of mentioned in pre-season about him. Of these, Sam, I'm guessing you'd be agreeing with me by what you said.
Yeah, I would. As boring as it is, people have strong opinions on Gyökeres already by the looks of it, but I think he'll tick over nicely. He'll get 90 minutes more often than not at the moment. And I think, I love both Saka and Eze as players. I think they're phenomenal. I'd love to own them, but there are individual issues with both of them right now that would put me off enough. I mean, Saka is too expensive to be carrying a minutes risk. And given that Arsenal have been wounded in recent seasons by some pretty serious injuries and have already seen a couple of players go down this season, including Saka's direct replacement, his backup, Madueke. I just don't think they can afford to run him into the ground. So I think he's going to consistently get brought off fairly early around a lot of these easier, in inverted commas, Premier League fixtures. If the game is sort of, well, actually, I was about to say if the game's dead, but we saw against Newcastle, we can still get brought off early, even when they're still fighting. So I would be too concerned to go with Saka at 10 million, well, just under 10 million. It's too expensive for a player that I'm not getting all of those other like box ticks from the 90 minutes, the penalties. I don't think he'll have those. I just think, as much as I love him as a player, he'll get returns. I just don't think it'll be enough for the price when you've got Gyökeres at a slightly cheaper price, who now probably has the penalties as well and will probably stay on for longer. I loved what I saw from Eze in the central role. I thought he was brilliant there, obviously getting some good shots away, unlucky not to score. But again, I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head. I just don't know if week on week, you know for certain that he's either going to start or get 90 minutes. And because of that, it makes it a slightly problematic pick when we've only got, if we could have unlimited Arsenal, then there might be a place for him, but we can only pick 3. So are you going to go with the players in the double defense and know for certain they're going to get 90 minutes and clean sheets most weeks? Or are you going to take one out, take a risk on Eze or Saka, or maybe even Gyökeres out as well? It just doesn't sit right with me at the moment. I think, as boring as it is, you get points in FPL by going with what you know and going for the nailed players. And I love them both, but I just can't go there yet.
Yeah, I agree. As one of those players, just pure vibes. I love seeing him in Arsenal kit, and he's one of those players that I want to have in a fun sort of format. The sort of thing where you can just pick a player, enjoy the fact that they're there. You've got a stake in them for that week or a little bit of time. As an Arsenal fan, I've got a stake in him anyway. But just for 1 week, you got a bit of a stake in him. And hey, you know what? In the 1 week punt update, Sam. Hey, guess who my pick is this week? So last week, blanks for both of us, and I with the 2-pointer, one shot, I think it was, in kind of the early on, and kind of just a bit quiet in that game.
Yeah.
And View, unfortunately, one of the Esteve goals was initially, people thought it was a Foden goal, but unfortunately it did go to Esteve, who scored as many as Haaland did in the end. But Foden also picked up yellow cards, just 1 point. So it doesn't really change very much. 25 for me, 16 for you. But yeah, Eze for me is my pick this week against West Ham. Just vibes. Pure vibes, nothing else. Love him in Arsenal kit. Love the fact he's playing for the team that I support, even though I do like Palace. But loving the team that I support, and this week I'm backing him to do well against West Ham.
Yeah, love it. Quick shout out to Pedro Porro, by the way, blocking those 2 Esteve own goals on my bench from coming off my bench and giving me my second minus player of the week. I was panicking a little bit. But yes, Foden blanked, unfortunately. I'm playing this for a bit of fun, obviously. And this week, after his heroics against Fulham, I think by this point I'm calling that heroics. Watkins at home to Burnley. Let's go with it. And I think he scores against Burnley. So fingers crossed.
I think so. It's one of those games we were circling, just being like, all right, at this point we were thinking we'd be having a season keeper in our teams, and obviously still in your team. But I was thinking at that point, yeah, you know what? By that point, I'm going to be laughing. I'm going to have 4 or 5 attacking returns over the first 6, and be like, maybe thinking, oh, maybe I could captain Ollie this week. But
yeah.
So it has not proved, unfortunately. Right, on to best captain this week. I think this was before the Bruno Pen miss, and I don't know to what extent that should probably impact our thinking. One that we were maybe thinking at the start of the year, oh, this might be a week where there's a lot to talk about. For old Erling Haaland, he's not doing too bad, is he? 8.6 non-pen XGI, more XG than the top 12 Premier League sides now. So that's 1 more than last week, unsurprisingly. And if you look at the underlying data, Sam, he's more than double Enzo and Yakuba Minte in joint second, and I think it's a Bumo, and I think it's Sarr, I think, underneath. It's absolutely crazy. So it just kind of feels like, yeah, I mean, it's I don't think it's triple captain week for those who have not used it, but I mean, could it be?
It could be. I think there will be better opportunities later on, personally, but there are goals in this game for him, and we've seen from seasons past he can hat trick against pretty much anyone. So yeah, I'm just not overthinking it this week. It is Haaland for me. I think and I know it probably shouldn't matter, but it does a bit that Bruno missed the last penalty, because that's now 2 out of 3 this season. And as much as I still do think he'll take the next one and continue on penalties, with every miss, it does just get fractionally more likely that one of the other guys is like, give me a go. Like, let's try this out. Because it's not like in the past, Bruno has never given away a penalty to someone like a Rashford, because it has happened. So that bothers me a lot more. The potential, the very outside chance that he might give away the next one bothers me more than the fact that he might miss the next penalty. I think his penalty record is good enough that I'd always back him anyway. But yeah, it's just the slight hesitation I have around the psychology around it and the team, whether he would generously donate one just so he's not in the firing line for this particular penalty, and that might be putting me off. Also, Sunderland are not a bad team defensively, and I don't know if Man United are going to find it that easy. Whereas, like you said, Haaland's got the XG of more than most teams. So I just think keep it simple, go Haaland, and sleep well at night. Gyökeres might not be a terrible pick. Watkins, if you're absolutely insane with the fixture. But yeah, I just think it's Haaland. Simple as.
I agree. I do think with United, that there is definitely but they've created the most XG in the Premier League this season. I mean,
yeah,
come on. I mean, they've had 4 penalties, right? They are
Three,
third
isn't
non-pen. Is it 3 or is it 4?
Well, Bruno's taken 3 penalties, put it that way.
Okay, I think it's 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. He scored 1 and missed 2, haven't they?
Correct.
And
Yeah.
they are third for non-pen XG. It's just that last week, for example, they had 1 penalty. So Bruno did not improve his non-pen XGI last week at all. He had 1 penalty, Man United, and they also had 3 shots that were 0.3, 0.4, and 0.3 XG. So 1 XG. They were all by one player. In one passage, which was Benjamin Sesko, when he finally scored. So that's the danger of a small sample, I guess. It's all kind of fluffed it up. It's all very fluffed up. So it's one of those things that if you do see that peddled around, I just kind of question that a tiny bit. On Gyökeres, doing well when pen box touches. I know that it was mentioned in the chat as well earlier on that he has had a couple of 0 XG games against Liverpool and Man City. I think a lot of that is attributable to how we set up in those games, to be honest. I'm not going to lie.
I agree.
We were set up to just try to
Make
get
it.
something from the game. I mean, that is just what you expect from Arteta against those teams. But there are signs that handbrake has been lost. And I'd be hoping that we would go for it against West Ham, to be honest. I know West Ham will again set up to frustrate, but I don't think we're going to set up to match that. And against Newcastle, I think there were a lot of encouraging signs for kind of how we're going to look at things going forward. I do think Gyökeres played pretty well actually against West Ham. There were a couple of moments where I think there was one moment where he was played where he there was a difficult chance where he could have probably controlled it, but I think it just kind of could have gone for it first time and he kind of just miscontrolled it. There were a couple of moments like that where it didn't quite sort of come together for him. As another time where he kind of was going for the shot and fell over. It will come together for him, I think, and he is kind of a bit of a flat track bully. We do need that kind of player to step up in the big games, but hey, we've got Gabriel for that moment, and we've got Marino. They can score penalties. They can score from set pieces, and Gyökeres can be hidden. But for the upcoming run up until kind of game week 12, 13, I think that he'll tick along fairly well. It's just going to take a very, very brave manager to go against Erling Haaland this week. And frankly, that's far too rich for my blood, given how Haaland's performing. Not TC for me, but I do think that that's probably, worth just not worrying about too much, to be honest. Right. Okay. Our teams for this week. So, Sam, you're going to try to make it then to game week 13. I see that you've already got big Gabs in. So Mario is no more for you. Makes a lot of sense. I don't think you've got any need to wildcard, have you, for a little while?
I'm not sure. I'm still thinking about it even for this week, to be honest. I like a lot about my team, but I think week to week there are holes that are appearing that maybe I like whenever I show my team to anyone else, they're like, what are you even talking about? But like Sanchez in goal, I think is an issue. I want double Arsenal defense from this week and I can't get to it. I think I can cover it off well enough. I've made the Gabriel transfer early, obviously. Porro, I think, is an asset I'd like to move on. Probably also Senesi needs to come in at some point very, very soon. I'm just bleeding points every single week that I don't have Senesi and I do have Porro in my starting lineup. As much as I like Anderson, both Andersons, in fact, they are kind of just surviving on DEFCON alone and nothing else at the moment. So I think those are potential angles. I don't have any Crystal Palace defense, for instance, as well. In my midfield is probably my strongest element right now. But even that, I think there are potential upgrades I could make. I like the fact that I've got Sarr in there against Everton. I don't think it's a great fixture, but he's good enough that I think it will be okay. Bruno and Reinders, I'd probably maybe switch out two of those on a wild card, probably hold on to Fernandez, as annoying as that might sound. And then up top, Watkins has got one more week. Next week, I'd be probably wanting to move him on anyway. If I don't wild cards, then it's a transfer for Gyökeres, and then I have to wait yet another week or two to get to the likes of Senesi, another Arsenal defender, Semenyo in the midfield. I don't have covered off yet as well. Yeah, I just think holes are appearing. I don't know. I can probably stay the wild card, but I've also got to consider bench boost at some point. And if I did wildcard this week, I'm pretty convinced on most of it, and I would be very well set up for a bench boost in 8 as well. And I'd be very happy with my team to get to even 5 free transfers by the time we get to like game week 13, 14 anyway. So do I even need to wait on using a wildcard then? Or am I just going to, I suppose the big question for me is, am I happy, or do I think I will drip too much value in points and in price over the next 6-7 game weeks before I even get to the wild cards to make it worthwhile holding off? Or is it going to be powerful enough when we get to that point that I will be able to make all the changes I want and really steal a march on everyone else? Or will it be too late by that point? And I've bled value, I've bled points, and the drip feed of Senesi, Semenyo, DEFCON, extra defenders, extra Arsenal, will it all just punish me a little bit too much over the next 5-6 game weeks to make it worthwhile waiting?
Yeah, I feel you. It's a difficult thing because like your team is not bad, and it's one of those that you kind of, if Football Manager saves scumming, there's a world where probably about, I say maybe 65-70% of the time you send that out and you get 60-70 points, and that's perfectly fine most weeks.
I think it's okay for this week. I think this week it will probably be enough to get me a green arrow. It's just then next, it's like just ongoing issues every week, if that makes sense. Like I've only got one free transfer a week to deal with those, and there's 5 or 6 players I would want to get in pretty quickly now. So yeah,
I'm one thing I will say is that I really don't like the game week 8 bench boost.
Do you not? I love it.
I don't, because of the temporal factor that it's post international break. And that is where you're likeliest, that is where you're most vulnerable in terms of missing a player. And coming from me in game week 1, where Tosin was randomly just out, obviously not an international break, but that's the time when you have to kind of factor that into your thinking a little bit more. Whereas I think after game week 8, so if you wildcard for game week 8 and then take it into game, and then 9, at least you kind of have a bit of a better lay of the land when it comes to your bench boost. And I think the fixtures still all right for the edge pieces in game week 9, as far as I remember. Like
it's not okay for Sunderland though, because they've got Chelsea, and I really want Sunderland on my on my bench. Like I really like Alderete, I really like Xhaka. If I bench boost 9, I wouldn't be going with Sunderland. I'd be going with probably Leeds, I think. Do they have Wolves that week?
They do. Wolves and Leeds play. And then Wolves play Burnley that week.
So I could argue, I could also look at Burnley.
Like it's not terrible, and like it's someone like Alderete, I mean, against Chelsea. I mean, 3 points for 3 points for DefCon. I mean, I know obviously you're trying to maximize, etc. But I do kind of see your point. It's just that when you get, I think Alderete is in Paraguay's first team, for example. I know they're playing a. I looked this up earlier. Actually, they're playing as Korea and Seoul.
Wow.
I think it's on the Tuesday though, so you'll probably be okay for them coming back. João Pedro. Depends if he's playing for Brazil. I don't know what you do. I don't know whether you go for Enzo. João Pedro's actually got himself sent off for Chelsea tonight, last minute. So done himself a favour, frankly. I probably just couldn't bother wanted to rest during the Champions League for a couple of games. So he's got himself sent off for 2 yellows. So he's going to miss a game.
He does have that in him, to be fair, as well. Something to monitor on João Pedro. He does have that streak in him.
Yeah.
Bit of a tenure about him.
I mean, the thing is, like, I suppose there's always an element with wildcard. I'll spend time on yours because mine's just like I'm going to roll and do nothing. But I mean, I think that like for your team, if you wildcarded now, there's always that kind of emotional element that probably the team that you play is the team that you pick. It's not going to be as clear versus the team that you have. So you won't be carrying Watkins, for example.
Yeah.
Like, I look at that game and think, well, that's golden assists. That's kind of like 12 points basically out of that. And you've got loads of good pieces in place. You've got Reinders there. You've got Bruno against Sunderland. I think he'd still be in most people's teams at the moment. You've got Watkins, who's a pick that most wildcards don't have, but he's a good pick this week. You've got Tarkovsky. You've got Gabriel. You've got Ants on the bench, who you probably keep. You've got Haaland. You've got Reinders, who you probably keep. You've got Dubravka, who you probably keep. Tarkovsky you probably keep as well, and so
maybe not after this week.
Yeah. So maybe it is one more week. You can't roll the transfer. One more week, and then you do it over the international break potentially.
Maybe
you do have a few. You do have a few issues, but they're not the same issues that I had in terms of injured. Not going to be playing anytime soon.
Yeah,
we always say find an excuse to roll. But given how you're going to have to make a few changes over time, it's more like elective versus necessity, I guess. I don't know. I'd be tempted. I wouldn't do it this week, but I think that if you do have an itchy finger, over the national break might be a good time to do it, frankly, and then maybe set up for a game week 9 bench boost, because I think that's probably the last time that I really consider doing it, when the game starts to come thick and fast really after that, to be honest, mate.
Yeah, I think there's an okay one in, is it a game week 11? It might be all right, or maybe game week 10. Sunderland have Everton at home. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. You could pick up Fulham. Like Fulham have got Wolves at home, I think, that week.
So keep Anderson, maybe have
Yeah, and then Bryson. It was at Brighton Leeds, but you're right about the. Where are you at with like? You're right. So part of the reason why I wildcard early as well is because I had the ideal sort of inverted commas wildcard team, and I was at 0.2, 0.3, but there was players like Semenyo and Senasai in it. I was just like, they're going to move. So like, if, as I said to you last week, if I'd have wildcarded on the Monday, then I'd have been at 0.0 and/or I think it'd been at 0.0, so I'd have been I got 0.4 in the bank, but if I'd have left it for a little bit longer, then I would have be at 0.0 sort of thing, and hopefully that flex will butterfly effect and something useful going forward. Like, where are you at with that wildcard team then?
I'm about, I think 0.2, 0. Maybe 0.4 wiggle room actually. But yeah, again, I mean, this time last week, I was pretty confident that the wild card I would have picked for last week would be the same as this week. But now there's like 1 or 2 changes there. So maybe this time next week, there's another 1 or 2 changes that make it affordable yet again. I think maybe I do just need to tell myself to try and be patient. If the team doesn't need a wild card immediately, find a reason not to use it. Maybe that's the way to play it. It's not a bad team this week. So
no, I think thinking about the fixtures next week, I'm only kind of having a cursory glance. I think next week would be when I'd be thinking, yeah, when that comes through, maybe there would be a couple of changes I would make. It's
Who knows? Maybe Salah comes back into it, and everyone wants to get back to him after Chelsea's out the way.
Don't know, mate. One visionary at the start of the year said he'd score under 150 points. And I'm taking
If
that one to
that
the
comes
bank.
true, I still can't believe that will come true. But
I
yeah,
will not
maybe.
get any recognition whatsoever. I'd have to do some.
We'll be shouting it from the rooftops. That we'll be shouting it at all the FPL meets. It will be a big thing.
No one will ever care. Hey, there we go. Liverpool have just lost tonight as well.
Wow, against Galatasaray, right?
Against Galatasaray, indeed.
Yeah. You know who didn't lose though, Tom?
I know. Mighty Saints won 2-1, didn't they?
Yes.
Yeah. Allison was off injured as well, by the way.
Oh wow,
if
okay.
that actually matters to you in any way, shape, or form.
Interesting.
No, I don't think it does. Right. Okay. There we go. Onto my team. I'm doing nothing. Gabriel is being played. Romero is also on the bench. Didn't play tonight. Not in the team. Maybe injured. Probably international break injury. But I don't care. I'm going to do absolutely nothing. The plan is to do absolutely nothing all the way into game week 10, when I'm going to probably buy Minte for Ndai. But yeah, I'm just going to do nothing for a little while. And
that looks so strong.
Just
that
hope
if that doesn't get a green arrow, I don't know what does.
You say that, but given my luck over the last few months, Sam, I'm going to say that I'm going to get 35 points. And that Salah will go wild, and I'll have a red arrow. Somehow, it's just going to happen. I feel like I've done deal with the devil at some point. I'm not sure when. Maybe when Lucy was on the pods, and I was just like, "Oh, I really need a good year this year. Please, FPL devil, sort me out." Or maybe back in the past when I got like a really good rank, but obviously I was very ill. Maybe I was like, if I survive, give me a good. I'll take it. I'll take one very good FPL year. But after this, it was all going to go badly. But I'm just assuming that this squad is so well owned that it's not just me. I'm going to take so many people down with me that there's some schadenfreude in that. But yeah, no, I'm not going to read the team out because everyone's going to know what that team looks like because everyone else has got it. But yeah, I'm also pleased to announce that I'm now solvent, Sam, in terms of my team value. I'm at 101 million after being down to 99.7 at one point, just because I bought the players everyone else seems to be buying.
101 million or 100.1 million?
101 million.
Wow, that's risen very quickly.
It has,
I
yeah.
think I'm like 99.5.
It's just buying players like last week, all those swinger players like swinger players, all those guys like Senasai, Gabriel, Raya, Semenyo, Haaland when he was 14.1. Now he's at 14. Yeah, 14.1 I got him in at, and now he's 14.4. Like all of these players, just getting them in really early. And the players I'm probably not going to be selling, but at least it kind of makes me feel better about my financial situation, as in life. Anyway, that's it. I think we've done very well to get that out of that. But hey, there we go. Hopefully, green arrows this week.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I mean, I think you look very well set up, and I don't think I look badly set up. So fingers crossed for both of us. And of course, if your teams look anything like ours, fingers crossed for you as well. Today has been a pleasure as always, Tom. Thank you so much for all of you coming in and listening to us, especially with Champions League going on in the background. We have, as always, been Who Got the Assist. You can find us on Blue Sky at Who Got the Assist, all written out one word, or FPL Pricey for me. On X, it's WGTA_FPL, FPL Pricey as well over there. And on YouTube, it's WGTA_FPL, and I'm FPL Pricey on there as well. If you did enjoy the pods, please do one or all, preferably, of the following, including following us on those social channels, giving the pod a 5-star rating wherever you're listening in, or if you're watching along on YouTube, we'd really appreciate it if you did hit like and subscribe before you're done watching. Thank you so much.
Yep. Friday night deadline this week, and
yes.
You got your Thursday night for you.
First one I'm missing. That's why I would have said it otherwise. Sorry, mate. I've been doing well so far, but I'm out on Thursday, so I can't make it. Might try and do like a Friday during the day or something, or maybe I'll do a Friday live stream for the deadline if anyone's interested. Maybe. I'll think
Check
about
him
it.
out. FPL Pricey on over on YouTube. Anyway, thanks, Sam. Thanks, everybody, very, very much. Thanks for listening. Hope we assisted you. Think about fixture swings and swingers in general. Don't get your car keys out, people. Or do, if that's the way you want to live your life. I'm not judging. We'll be back next Tuesday for an international break special with pod friends, FPL Analytic, aka Simon, which we're looking forward to, talking about the enduring impact on analytics and FPL. All the best for Game Week 7. Remember that own deadline, and see you next Tuesday.
Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.